Hopefully that's probably the magic number. I am going to kick off. So good morning, everyone. Today's appraisal session. We ran one yesterday. It did with questions take about 2 hours. Just so you know, we have got a break at around the 50 to 55-minute mark. There's a lot of interaction on today's session. We've got videos, we've got whiteboards, we've got polls, just so you're not listening to my dulcet tones for 2 hours, because I imagine that's too much for anyone to go through. So just to set the scene on what we're doing today, and just a little bit of context, because we've got a lot of questions about this on the previous sessions. The interim appraisal process that you're currently doing now, just to let you know that we've had the training on that doesn't change. It's in the same way that we had the old system built in Talent Central, so the rating system and the process. The only difference is obviously we're using the interim appraisal form within Cascade, and they need to be completed and all filled in by the 14th of February for completion for the assessment of the 2018 performance year. Also, just to be very, very clear, the competency framework that we used to use no longer exists. We're not going to use that going forward. We have got our new behaviour framework, so that will become null and void. And I know I can't hear you all, but there'll be cheers going because a lot of people didn't like it and found it quite clunky. And then just so you know, everything about now going on is about the new way of working under the new appraisal. So the new appraisal system that we've designed and developed, given all of your feedback, and there's been a lot of feedback, which I just want to thank everyone, because I think without that we wouldn't have been able to build a new, really clear and defined appraisal system for you. And one other point just to sort of kick off with is you as an individual, as an employee, are responsible for drafting, writing and owning the process around your appraisal. Yes, you'll need input from your line manager or other people that review you, but it's one person writes one appraisal. So we had a lot of questions, and I thought rather than you start typing those up, I'd sort of add that into the beginning of the day. Just if you have got any questions as you go along, please put them in the comments box, and a member of the HR team or me throughout the breaks will endeavour to answer all of these. We are recording this session, just so if any of your colleagues, obviously we've got 92 people on the call, any of your colleagues are not available today, they can watch this at their own leisure. So what we're going to be covered today, what's included, what's different about this new appraisal system, how the split of the role and objectives and weighting looks differently in this new appraisal system, what else is new, what we've added, what we've listened to you, and what we've added into the process to make it a more succinct process, but also bringing out other areas that we should be discussing, we should be identifying as part of the appraisal process. What the actual process is, so we've got a video later on, which is about 15 minutes, and that will just talk you through the process. And then a little quick summary about carrying out a mid-year review. Now, the reason we're doing that, it just helps you plan now for what you'll need to do at the mid-year review and the end-of-year review, and it's just a very, very quick oversight. Then we'll look at the tools. So we've developed some tools to help you and support you in developing your content around your appraisal, and then next steps and just a little bit of housekeeping at the end. So straight into the detail, it's what needs to be included in your thinking when you're preparing for an appraisal. I think we want to kick that off by saying it's the continuous improvement. So there's the big picture stuff, so we've got our strategy, we've got our mission, we've got our values, but the big bit around that, obviously we've got our effects and our role and how that impacts people affected by Parkinson's. So I think the area about that is you should be able to see a clear line of sight between what your role delivers and what you're expected to do and how you're expected to do it, and how you can continue to impact people affected by Parkinson's and improve you through your skills and experience within your role. Then we look at what we need to focus on and specifics and ready to share at your appraisal. So it's where do you need to develop? What do you need to develop in? How are you lacking in skills, experience, exposure? Also, how do you maintain that performance and stay above the curve? As part of any performance review in any organisation, and I believe Parkinson's UK is a high performing organisation, we need to stay above the curve. So every year there is a step change that we need to do just a little bit more or learn a little bit more to be successful in our role. So it's just thinking about what do you need to do when you're thinking about your appraisal to ensure that we're staying above that curve. Then we've got one of the new areas, which is managing behaviour. So it's how we work, it's as simple as that. It's how we do what we do. So we've obviously got our job to do, deliver our job description, objectives if they're relevant, but it's the big new area about this is how do you work? So how do we need to do it? So what we do is your job role and your objectives. How we do it is how we communicate, how we unite, how we use the tools and collaboration areas that we've got to do that. And it's about what we need to do, what we need to continue to do, how we need to improve, and then looking at, are we modeling or promoting these behaviours across us, our teams, and the people that we come into contact with. Then the last area you need to think about is support and enablement. So what support do you need, and what are there out there, and what's out there that we can use to enable you to be able to achieve success in your role? And I think when we're talking about that, it's not just going on a training course. It might be shadowing people, it might be working, it might be exposure to different things, it might be an e-learning course, it might be a policy that supports that, it might be processes, anything like that. It's about what do you need, and what will then be an enabler for you to be successful in your role. And then the last element of that, and when do you need to do it by to make sure that it's successful? So do you need to do it in the first 3 months? Do you need to do it in the last 3 months? And that will be linked to you delivering within your role. What we need to ensure, so I think this is a big bit that I just wanted to sort of cover off. The relationship between an employee and the manager is the most important relationship that I have. And in terms of that, I've put 3 elements up there just for you to have a little read through. But if through open, transparent discussions, constant feedback, and a clear understanding and commitment from both parties, so from you as an individual and from your line manager, I think that strengthens that relationship and really ensures that as an employee where you're going, your line manager is clear about what they're expecting from you. If we can just get those 3 elements on a rolling basis and part of everyday work that we do and everyday communications and things like that, then actually clarity around how you're performing, where you are, is a lot easier for both people concerned. Then I think there's an area around us as individuals. We need to remember that we own our own development. So if there are areas that we're identified that we need to develop to achieve success in our role, or that we need to develop more so we can move to the next role, it's about just taking ownership of that. And we're all individuals, and there are people that say, well, actually, that's my line manager should make sure I do that. It's not. The onus is on us as individuals to make sure that we're skilled, we have the experience, we have the exposure, and to just keep looking out for those. And rather than, there's nothing worse when you come to an appraisal and you're told that you need to improve, or you're informed that you need to get better at something. Actually, self-recognition as an individual is a much better way of having a performance review, rather than you going in and you go, well, I thought I did really well, when your manager going, well, actually, I didn't, you could have done this better, or you could have done that better. Actually, since that self-analysis of you is a much better way to kick off any performance review, and in terms of delivering your role. Then the final bit on this one is around opportunities. We all need to look at what we can bring, what we can add. And when we've identified them, there's no point going, I'd be really good at that, and not telling anyone. So I think it's around, there's so many opportunities across Parkinson's UK for us to get involved in other things, even if it's a working group that sits alongside our role. It's something nothing to do with our role. Actually creating and stepping up to those opportunities will really enable you to build and and extend that knowledge base and skill in some area to make sure that you're setting yourself up for your future. Then obviously you'll hear me talk a lot about this, and I know you've heard a lot over the last couple of months, but in terms of the new brand values that we've worked on for about 18 months, we've now concluded them. We've gone live with them back in 2018, and they are on there. I'm not going to read through them, you've all seen them, but I think it's just these are going to underpin our roles, the way in which we deliver in our roles, and also underpin a lot more around that. So it's going to be how we recruit people, how we have team meetings, and I think just to put them up there so you can just have another look, because we are going to bring these to life and you're going to bring these to life through your appraisal, and then setting individual objectives around this. So just go, obviously we've got uniting, that's around us as making sure that we're collaborating in the right way, that we're really linking to the people that we need to work with on a frequent basis, and that actually we're improving by that, uniting people affected by Parkinson's. Then people first. I know that's one of the ones that we always say. It's really, really clear. But actually, yes, we are as part of this strong movement for change for people affected by Parkinson's, but we also need to put people first within our roles. So actually making sure that we're giving people the opportunity to feedback, to listen to what they're saying, and just to make sure that we are mindful of the impact that we have on others. So for me, I need to make sure I do that as a manager and create enough space for people to question what I'm doing and give constructive feedback and things like that. So it's about just ensuring we're doing that. Pioneering, it's a really, really new way of doing things in terms of encapsulating it within the behaviour pioneering, but it's about being innovative, being creative, using the tools and technologies that we're being given to strive to continue to be better, to reach more people affected by Parkinson's. And actually that's a really, really good one, because we can all be really, really creative in the way in which we do our roles, no matter what role we've got across Parkinson's UK. And then last, driven. And I've been here just over 18 months now, and I think people at Parkinson's are really driven, what they do, and they want to have the biggest impact both in their roles, in their careers, but also ensuring that the people affected by Parkinson's are really getting a sense of what we're doing to support them in their journeys, or their journeys as carers or families, and really making sure that we're driving forward that agenda. So that's just to give you a quick update on our behaviours, and we will be revisiting that later. Then we've done a lot of work on digital and data universal expectations. This is part of an area that we are moving forward with, and it's an enabler and gives us 8 key themes out of the digital and data universal expectations. And I'm just going to go through a couple. Most of these have been put in some way, shape or form within the behaviour framework. So when you look at creating and managing data, we've put that in the pioneering one in terms of behaviour, because it's using the tools. It's using the tools such as SIS, such as Google Sheets, Cascade, but it's about us using that and making sure that we maintain high quality data and insight to make sure that we're doing things. I've just put on here how we measure that through. We measure that through delivering our jobs, delivering our objectives if they're relevant, doing what it says on the tin in terms of our job descriptions, but also things around process guides and the learning and support that we offer. One of the other ones that we've got is keeping data safe. Obviously, we've had a lot of work and a lot of change around data protection, but also in terms of safeguarding and the principles and policies and procedures that we've got. That's one of the ones that's contractual, so we have to keep data safe. We have a legal obligation to do so, but we've got tools out there which will enable you, which are things like our policies and procedures, work right. I think there's over 16 e-learning elements on that platform. There's different training courses, and there's information and support on Staff Central. So that just sort of goes through and brings a couple of those to life, which we all have an obligation to do. Again, just linking through to this next one, I'm only going to pick one on this. So being people focused, that looks and links really, really clever to our behavioural framework in terms of people first. And it's just making sure that we're doing what we say that we're going to do, and really, working through planning, through the continuous improvement of our work, and making sure we're doing that. And we can then see that through our job role and objectives, team plans, and again, the behavioural framework is there to fully support that. So that was just to cover off other areas and other forms of clarity that we've got around enablers that can bring clarity around what we need to deliver in our role. Then we're going over, so now I'm just going to kick off with the new elements of our performance appraisal. So there's 3 elements that we've got now, the main elements around what we're going to be measured against when we are writing our appraisals, when we are reviewing them, when we are capturing information. So you've got job role is the first area that we'll have, and that is about clearly identifying, and I've put a copy of one of our new style job descriptions on there, but it's what do we need to do. So it's the area just covered to the left of the picture on the right, but it's what do we need to do? So what are the key requirements of us delivering our job? The old appraisal system meant that we just had objectives. What we've done now is we understand that a lot of the roles at Parkinson's UK shouldn't have objectives, because we're in reactive roles, we're in support roles or delivery roles, and those sorts of roles, as well as leadership roles, should be focused on doing the job. So leadership and management, managing email boxes, managing relationships and reacting to people affected by Parkinson's. So a lot of our front facing roles, it should be just delivering the job role. Then we've got individual objectives. Individual objectives are they are project based. So an individual objective should have a start, a middle and an end. So what do I need to do? And clearly define that at the beginning, and we use the SMART methodology, which I'll go through a little bit later, but it's around making sure when we're writing an objective, so you can also have one linked to finance or anything like that. So if you've got an income target, and that should be written using that terminology, but it's looking at that, you should be able to go, you need to do X, Y, and Z after 3 months, the same after 6 months, the same after 9 months. And this is what success looks like at the end of the year. The reason we've moved a lot of the information into job role is because when you're working with people affected by Parkinson's, or you're in a support role, or you're in a leadership role, you don't know how often you need to do something. You don't know how many more people are going to be diagnosed with Parkinson's within your area of work. You don't know how many people you can then deal with over a digital platform. You don't know how many good people you're going to need to meet face to face. So because we can't quantify that, it's unrealistic to set you an objective. So thereby we're moving that, and we're going to evaluate that and measure that within the job role. So it's only areas that have projects or other areas that we'll keep within the individual objectives. And then you've got our new behavioural framework, and within that, the behavioural framework's on Staff Central, but it's about taking the behavioural framework, and we split that into 4 distinct areas. So we've got as a team member, I will, as a subject expert, I will, as a manager, senior manager, and as a leader. And the reason we've done that, we've just got between 4 and 5 statements on each level across that. But actually, depending on what your role is, you might go, actually, I need to pick one that's more aligned to me. It's in the team member. As someone who is a subject expert, and a majority of the organisation are in some way, shape or form, I couldn't go out and speak to someone that's been affected by Parkinson's because I don't have that knowledge. But as a subject expert, you can. So you might pick 1 or 2 of those examples and then change that into the way in which you deliver your role. Then you've got manager, senior manager and leader. But depending on the role and how much commitment you need to give and what level you need to work at, you can pick and choose from across the whole of that framework and make sure it's relevant to your role. So like I said, there are statements on there. I would take the statement off and then make it aligned to you as an individual, because you have to personalize it for you and your role. They are just broad statements. If you've got a statement that you believe falls within Uniting that's not in there, write your own. As long as you're agreeing that with your line manager and you understand what needs to be achieved by that statement, it's entirely up to you. But so we've just created this statement just as an enabler to help you. Then we go over a little bit more. So we've got weighting in the current process, and we were continuing with that because I think there is a balance that we need to weight, and we need to agree that weighting with our line manager and say, what is the weighting that I'm going to be measured against in terms of the new measurement? So that's, again, we'll pick that up later. And it's what is so JR is job role, IO is individual objectives, and VB is value behaviours. As you can see, I put a couple of examples up there. So if you've got a service delivery role, such as a Parkinson's local advisor or Steve Ford, our CEO, you would probably have a split, which is at the bottom of that. So 60% to deliver your job role and 40% to deliver your behaviours. The behaviours are always set at 40%. So we've got 4, they're each 10%. They won't change. That is always 40% on everyone across, no matter what role you've got. When you've got someone who is a project manager, a majority of the time, yes, they'll have to do their job description. So that might be 5% and 6 and 55 within the individual objectives, but it's about they're all measurements. So everything they do is support and lead people and lead projects. So it's more measurable for them to have objectives. And this just really shows you on here that historically we've made everyone have objectives, but actually when you look at a majority of the roles across the organisation, I'd say more than 50% of them are in service delivery or support roles, and it shows that we should be measured against doing our job role. So doing exactly what we need to do, but linking to our job description. And yes, we can link our job description to performance indicators, we can link them to service level agreements, we can link them to charters of expectation and things like that. So there can be measurements, but because we can measure once we've got something in, so as an example, if a member of my team manages an email box, actually you can get that any payroll queries comes in needs to be answered in 4 hours. Any general inquiry needs to be answered within a day. Any recruitment needs to be answered within 6 hours. We can say, the reason it can't be an objective is because we don't know how many recruitment campaigns we're going to have. We don't know how many questions we're going to get in. So it can't be quantifiable in that. But we can then link and say, actually, you had to respond to all of these queries within 4 hours. You did it within 2. Actually, you've exceeded my expectations. And thereby it gives someone in a service delivery role the opportunity to exceed in their role, because under the objectives, it's very unlikely, because they're not smart enough, that actually you should be able to exceed within those roles. When we look at the realistic split, I think it's not about, and the bit I want to do that, it's what is realistic to the role in which you do. And one of the things I have gone out and asked a lot of people that are in job families, so when there's sort of more than 2 or 3 people in a role, and in some roles, and again, Parkinson's local advisor role, or we've got the regional fundraising roles, we've got multiple people doing the same role. So the principle should be the same. So the job role, individual objectives and the value behaviours, that split should be pretty consistent across all of those jobs. Then it means that when we come to the end of the year and we're looking at setting a standard, or we're looking at performance indicators about who's performed their job, who's exceeded their job, and who's been outstanding, we can look at that balance, because everyone's been given the same job role, the same individual objectives, and similar individual behaviours. And one of the things I just wanted to put it on there, it's not about the amount of time that you spend. So if you are full-time and you work 5 days a week, that doesn't mean that, and you do one element, that doesn't mean that that's automatically going to get most of your 60%. It's actually what you and your line manager think you should concentrate on to deliver that area of that work. Also, another area, if for any reason there's a behaviour that we go, actually it's 10%, and a manager feels that you need to increase the way that you collaborate or unite with team members or take part within team areas, they can actually give you another 10%, which they can put in an individual objective, which then pushes the weighting up for your values to 50%. So there's areas that we can use that, and just to make sure that people are concentrating on and focusing on the right area. I'm just going to have a mouthful of tea. This just shows you the behavioural framework. So one of the pages out of it, we've tried to keep it as succinct as possible. We've got 1 page per behaviour. So I just wanted to give you an example, because obviously talking through this it's easier, but actually I want to just show you how I would expect people to look at the behaviours and then translate that to you. So if you look as a subject expert, so second column in and the 3rd bullet point down, if you and your manager agree that actually that's the behaviour you need to, one of the behaviours you need to have against uniting, I would take that and say collaborate effectively. So I'm going to use this as a member of my team. Collaborate effectively across organisational development and through managers and employees, and ensure that I'm engaging the right people and giving them the right information associated with recruitment and ER issues at the right time. So I've basically just taken that statement and just personalised it for a member of my team. It just makes it clearer. It just makes it then, if I have got a member of my team, and as you know, I didn't mention external people there, if a member of my team then actually stepped up and started dealing with external suppliers and external agents in the same way, then that person's exceeded that expectation and thereby exceeded the delivery of that behaviour. And that's where you'll then be able to really clearly quantify at the end of the year, has someone exceeded or been outstanding? And also, if you put down there that you needed to collaborate with HR and managers, and then I had loads of feedback throughout the year, you know, as a manager, I'm always asking a member of your team questions and they never respond. Then I can quite clearly have the evidence to say, actually, you haven't achieved that, and thereby you're underperforming in that behaviour. So the clearer you can make that and more aligned you can make that to your role, the clearer it's going to be when you're having a mid-year review, or you're going to be having reviews throughout the year. And then when you come to the end of the year and you're signing off your performance appraisal, it makes it easier and less ambiguous and less or like perception driven, and actually it's more evidence based, and you'll both go into that meeting with a clear understanding of where you are and what rating you should be given around that. So I hope that's really clear. Then we're going to go in terms of look at the appraisal. So what we've done within HR, obviously you don't want to just listen to me for 2 hours, as I said. As part of that, I've just gone through some examples around, as part of the appraisal, if you've got one of these 12 elements within your job, where does it go? Does it go in the role area of your appraisal, in the objective area, or does it go in the behaviours? So what we're going to be doing is putting up some whiteboards. They said dashboards then. Whiteboards. So we've got this with the first 4. And what I want you to do on the right hand side, you've got a little green tick now on your dashboard. If you click on that and then click on the actual whiteboard, so I'm going to pick one and I'm going to put this in completely the wrong place. Oh, we've just lost the picture. Hold on, that's good. Is everyone, Jez, can you see the picture? Hold on, we're just going to reload that. Sorry for those people that started. This is what always happens. Technology. Right, we're going to go for number 2 while Jess sorts out the first one. So on this one, same sort of thing. So reaching a milestone, carrying out a project. So all you'll do is click on the green tick, and then if I was to say carrying out a project was in there, I just click in that little box and it'll put a tick in. What I want you all to do, and there's 107 of you, click in for all of those. Where do you think reaching a milestone, carrying out a project, line management and all of that should go? And then I'll just talk through it once you've done it and we can have a little discussion. Give you a minute just to do those. It's quite funny, you won't be able to see your tick in a minute. Well, you can't see your tick now. It's like you're all colouring it in. Right, I'm just going to quickly go through some of these then. In terms of that, we've got I think there's on reaching a milestone, we've got a majority of the people have probably put an objective. We have got some people that have picked role and behaviour. We've got one person that's ticked right out in the middle of the whiteboard. Probably a test tick. What I would say to that, reaching a milestone, it's always an objective. It's something that you've got to do. It's normally linked. You have to do a certain thing by a certain time, thereby there's a really clear measurement in place. If we have a clear measurement, then it's always delivering against an objective. So that's there. In terms of reaching a milestone, if you're talking about the how you've reached it, so how you've collaborated, how you've united, how you've been pioneering and been innovative, then it could be the behaviour. But in terms of reaching a milestone, it's always an objective. Then on carrying out a project, we've got a real even split really across the board. It's delivering the role or it's delivering the objectives. Carrying out a project is always the objective. It's never anything else. So and for that reason, it's because we say, and I'm used Cascade as an example, I was tasked with bringing Cascade in. So one of the things I had to do was go out and ask people what they wanted from a new HR and payroll system. I then had to build a tender. I then had to go out and look for suppliers. I then had to evaluate the suppliers. I then had to develop the system, bring it in, train people, make changes to policies and processes. All of those are different milestones I had, but actually I had to do that within a set time frame. So by the end of December, I had to bring it in on budget, and thereby that's always an objective because it's really clear to see what you have or what you haven't done. Then you've got Line management responsibility. There's a few people that have got other areas. Yes, it is part of the job role. We all don't know. As a line manager, we don't know how often, how hard, or how complex line manager's going to be. We might have an amazing team, and we really just keep the ship going. However, you don't know if a couple of times that year you're going to have difficult issues to deal with and things like that. So it's not quantifiable. So yes, there are elements of measurements. There's policies and procedures processes that we need to follow, but actually we don't know how often and how frequent we need to do it. So it's always put in the job role area. Then we've got being an active team member. I think majority of people are behaviour, and there's a few job role. Yeah, I think there is an element within it. I need to make sure I collaborate and share information as part of my role with team members. That might be in your job role, but actually how we are an active team member is how we do our job, and it is 100% a behaviour, because that's how we collaborate with people, how we communicate, how we listen. All of those areas is about how we do our job. So a majority of the time it is about that. I would say in this instance, it's never going to be an objective around that, because it's not measurable. And again, it sort of links to the line management. How often, how good do I need to support people and things like that. So thank you for that. We're going to try and go back to the first one. Just give us a minute. I should have music at this point. It's very small, so this is going to be quite difficult, but we'll use it anyway. Oh, yeah, so that's worked. So now, if we look at, you're all on it already. So what we started with: financial target, taking minutes at meeting, communicating with stakeholders, and delivering against a KPI, which is the key performance indicator, or a service level agreement. So where do we think that falls? It looks a lot nicer when you've got more people on the call. It becomes a little bit more colourful. Oh, someone found the cross. I quite like that. I was doing that. So in terms of that, I'm going to kick straight off. Financial target. Yeah, I think if we could say the ayes have it, the green ticks have it, it's always a financial target. If I'm tasked with raising £100,000, then I know how much I've got to raise and when I've got to do it by. So it's an objective, 100%. Taking minutes at meetings. Again, yes. It is, I know that's disappeared, but I'm going to carry on talking. Taking minutes at meetings is definitely within your job role. There are some minor instances where taking minutes at meetings would be within your objective, and that is if it's part of your job. So for instance, someone like the assistant company secretary who has to go and take meetings at the same time every month. They have to be in a particular format, 100% accuracy, need to be done within a certain time frame, and again, not that. So if you can really quantify it, then it would be. But if it's just general, then it is always delivering the job. Communicating with stakeholders is the next one. So we had that on the left and the right, and obviously remembering objectives is in the middle. If you look at that, very much it's completely split, and it's a real even split, and I completely agree with everyone. It's how we do it, so, and how we're delivering our role, how we communicate, how we email, how we video conference and things like that, but it is also as part of delivering our role. And it is very much that. So this is a bit that you'd then put it in your role as one of your key elements, but then you'd also mirror that in terms of your behaviours in how you do it. So I think that's a really, really good one. And then the last one is delivering against a KPI or an SLA. This is always one that sort of pushes people off, and they go, oh, I don't know. It's a measurement, so it has to go in objectives. Actually, normally, delivering a KPI for the 4 people that picked job role, 5 people, they are correct, because actually that's when you're normally in a reactive role, and you're in a front-facing role, or you're in a leadership role. And in terms of that, it's because when you're doing that, it's making sure that you're doing it in line with a charter of expectations, or you have to respond. So if you're working with someone and you have you have to respond to someone that say you're in a role in fundraising and you have to respond to a potential support within 4 days or something like that, then it's linked to you doing your day job. You can link them, it's come back. You can link them to service level agreements and things like that in an objective, but a majority of the time, even though it's a measurement, you'll have those measurements linked to doing the day job. So it's normally within the job role. So brilliant. Thank you very much for that. I hope that was useful. We just run those sessions in, one, to keep you a little bit more engaged, but also I think it's quite useful when you're doing that just to have a go, and then for me just to have a little quick talk through on what that looks like. Then we've got the new bits, and I think these are the, for me, these are probably the new bits that most excite me, if I'm really honest. And it is around, we're looking at the last 3 main areas of the appraisal form, is to talk through job satisfaction, individual personal development and career development. With that job satisfaction, we only used to ask how satisfied you were in your job when you left the organisation as part of the exit process. Not useful because you're leaving. Now one of the things that we've brought in and we've developed is having that discussion mid-year, having the conversation with your manager and saying, what do you like about it? What don't you like about it? And also we've got a rating. So 10 means, so there's a bit for you to write some context, and then there's a drop down box for you to say it's numbers 1 to 10, and that 10 being it's the best job I've ever had, I love it, I couldn't imagine anything better. 1, it's the worst job I've ever had, I don't want to be here, I'm looking to leave. And then what it is having a conversation, and it's not always about resolving those issues. If you have a job where 50% of your job is filing and photocopying, it's part of the job but you don't like it, then maybe it's time to look for a new job. If it's around, actually, there's elements that I don't like, and I'll give you a little bit of an example. My last role, I managed 4 people, and they all had very similar roles, and actually, they all had budget responsibility. One of them wasn't very good at it, didn't like doing it, and when we sat down and said, you know, what's the bits you like, what's the bits you don't like, there was just this bit that they wasn't good at it, they struggled with it all the time. Actually, there was another member of the team that loved it. So what I managed to do within that environment was say, right, you don't have to do budgets anymore, I'm going to give it to the other person, and then you'll take on the bit that they less liked, and actually everyone then became really satisfied in their job. So I'm not saying we can do that all the time, but it's at least having a conversation, and at least if you're documenting, I like these bits and I don't like these bits, it's about a debate. Also, it opens up the debate if you're not satisfied in your job. I would, as a manager, go, well, what are you doing about it? If you don't like it and you don't like big elements of it, then why are you in it? And that's a clear conversation to have, because we don't want people unhappy in their jobs, but we also want to be able to look at that context across the organisation. So if we're doing that across the organisation, we're reporting, and we say, do you know what? Everyone in finance are a 10, everyone in HR are 4 or 5s. Why? Is that because of my leadership style? Is that because I don't give people autonomy to do elements of their role? There's so many different elements, but it at least opens up and has the conversation rather than us waiting until someone's decided they hated their role that much that they're leaving. So that's a really key area, and it's just there to create discussion and grab some context. Then we've got individual personal development. This is about what development do you need as an individual in your role to deliver your role within the coming year or the next year. It's about sitting down going, what do I need? Do I need? So we know there's a lot of change around digital this year. So do I need more SIS training? Do I need more G Suite training? Do I need an update on Cascade? Do I need more awareness of a bit of legislation out there that's going to enable me to do my job? Whatever that is, identify it, write it down, and we can make sure that we're looking at delivering that. Because if you do have learning needs and they're not met, then you're not going to be able to deliver within your role if it's part of that. Then we've got the other area that we've added in, and I think this is more around succession planning, career development, talent management. And it's that question what we used to ask back in the day when I started in HR is, you go to an interview for a job and then they'd say to you, where do you want to be in 5 years? It was always an awkward question, because it was, do I want the manager who's interviewing me, do I want to say, I want your job? Or do I just go, oh, I just want to develop? This is about, we are Parkinson's UK. We are only 500 staff. We're a medium organisation. We know that there's a lot of direct reports that report into a manager. So if a manager leaves, only one person out of 6 or 10 is likely to get that job. So it's, where do you want to be? What do you need to do? So if you want to do something and say, for instance, go into a head role or go into a strategy role, but you've never written a strategy, you've never done budgets, you've never done any of that. It's about you going, I want to do that. This is where I see my focus. It might be you go, I'm in finance, I want to work in HR. It's about you identifying what that does, and then how can we support you doing that? And I'm not saying we're going to then start sending you on a course to go on that, but it's then you and your manager can look for opportunities. You can have a go at doing the budget and present that to your manager, and say, look, I've had a thought, I've tried to do that. When you go to another job, they'll always say to you, have you got experience? It doesn't mean you were responsible for doing it. It's have you got experience of doing it, and can you talk me through it? So I think that's a really key thing that we really want to concentrate, and that's that's a ever moving beast, that one, but it's really important that we capture some of that information. Then you've got your real bog standard employee summary, line manager summary. This is about, as an employee, what do I think I've done? What were my massive successes in this year? If you've written this already throughout your appraisal form, don't write it again. It's just an area for you just to do a summary. You don't have to fill it out. If you've captured everything else elsewhere, then don't put anything in there. I don't want people writing in the appraisal where they don't need to. And also, one of those things, linking back to all of this form, if you have done exactly what you needed to do, then we don't want you writing War and Peace. As long as you and your manager have got a clear understanding of what that was, make sure that you're just capturing that. And then we've got the ratings, and ratings are always that one that everyone goes, oh, ratings, I hate that, because this is then, it becomes judgment, it becomes perception, and it becomes evidence-based. So we have gone with a 4-box or a 4 rating system. We have got one that's called underperforming, and that's because there are people from time to time, and normally around the sort of 5 to 0% where people new to roles, they've stepped up into a promoted role, so they haven't got the experience or the knowledge to do certain aspects, or they've been in the role for quite a while and they're not hitting the required standard. And that could be that they've been in the role for 10 years and now they've lost job satisfaction, they're not doing what they need to do. And if you're not meeting the requirements of your role, your objectives or your behaviour, then it's around saying and stepping up as an employee and saying, yeah, I didn't perform that in the way I should do, and actually doing that and putting that down. Then we've got performing. Performing, and I use these analogies, which my team keep laughing at me, but I see performing as Ronseal. Now, it's a brand. I imagine there's other brands out there, but as part of that slogan was, Ronseal does exactly what it says on the tin, i.e. paint a fence really well. That's what we expect. 80% of the organisation should get performing, and that just gives you a role. And that's not that we're setting a standard for that and we're saying we're only allowing 80% to get that, but if you look at performance management principles, and these have been around for years, that's roughly where you get what everyone should be doing. It's basically, I performed my job and I performed it really, really well. And, we do a good job, but it's we're doing a good job and doing it really, really well. Then you've got these last two, and I'm going to put these up at the same time. You've got exceeding. With this is where you go, do you know what? I've done my Ronseal, but I've exceeded, and I use the Mr. Kipling. I don't know if this is a food one for me. And it's where I've done everything I needed to do to deliver in an element of my role. But do you know what? On a monthly basis, on a frequent basis, I stepped up and I delivered and demonstrated that I had a bigger impact, that I did a lot more. And actually, I want to be recognised for that, because actually I didn't just perform my job. I really, really stepped up. And I would always say that within the organisation is between your 5 to your 10%. That's really where we should be putting that in a ballpark, because it's quite hard to exceed, on a constant basis. So that's why we've got exceeding. And then we've got outstanding. And outstanding is to recognise those people that have done everything we've said before, but actually they have had a contribution to people affected by affected by Parkinson's is significantly recognised by other stakeholders, so other teams, other leadership, stakeholders externally, and really done something completely outstanding within that year, which has put them leaps and bounds above everyone else. And we would normally say that outstanding, when you're looking at overall, is 1% of the organisation. When you look at that 1 to 2% of the organisation, we're talking at the moment 5 people, that get that. So it's not a lot, but it's recognition of our talented people. And I would always say, if you've got outstanding 1 year, you're probably not going to get it for the rest of your year at Parkinson's UK, because to maintain that level of exceptionalness is impossible. But it's just, we want to be able to recognise, and we want managers to be able to recognise employees to self-recognise actually when they have met these triggers. So that's the rating system that we're going with. Now you'll be really, really pleased to know, and I did it 3 minutes early, is you now have, and I'm going to give you an 8-minute break. So sorry, Mark, you know what? I did just think that. I went out and I was going to get a biscuit, but I didn't want that. It's one of those things. So moving on, I hope you're all back. I hope the break was useful. Now we've got a couple of case studies, and this is just to keep you all involved. And obviously I've spoken a lot at you, and I get that, and I know it's a lot to take in. So we've got 2 case studies, and I'm going to quickly read through it. You're going to have a minute to a minute and a half to read this. I'm just going to sort of cover it off a little bit. Parker was responsible for bringing in 100k during 2019, and he had to do this by the following method. So in terms of bringing that 100k in, he had to make sure that he'd done that and got gifts in associated with the 3 points below that. These are made up, so please bear with me. We just want to get a sense of what you think. At the end of the year, he achieved an income of £109,000 by doing what it said up the top. In the final week, he got an £80,000 gift. Amazing. That would be the biggest gift in charity history from a donor. But when he did that, he didn't have a relationship with them, and he didn't follow the method above. But he then did have an income target of 189k. What we're going to ask in a minute, we're going to put a poll up. I'm just going to give you literally a minute again to read through that. I'm going to ask you, what performance rating, given what I've just been through, would you give Parker? So you've got a minute. This is definitely where I should have some background music. So I could sing, but you know what? My dulcet tones are bad enough to listen to, let alone without me doing that. I'll have to get some of the team to have a little go. Yeah, still knackered. I'm not going to. Right, Jez is going to put up a poll. Again, what I want you to do is pick what one out of that first case study. So what performance rating would you give Parker? So on you go. Got about 50 people complete it already. Have the other 50 still be on? Are they still on their break? And did they miss this bit? I could dance. You're quite right, Sue. I'm quite a good dancer, but you'd only see my head sort of doing that. Right, for the 3 people that have said I'm underperforming, I'm just pleased that you're not my line manager. In terms of that, in terms of going through that, I think the Greens have it in terms of performing, and the reason being, I know that there's probably 25% of people that said exceeding. If we go back to the slide, oh no, I need to go back to the slide, or Jess is going back. Hold on. Give me one sec. We go back to the slide. In terms of that, one of the reasons why, and I can only look at this if I was line managing this individual, he brought in an income. So yes, he brought in 10% more throughout that year. in terms of the way in which he had to use the methods above. In terms of the 80K gift, he didn't do anything for it. Someone walked in off the street, signed a check and just gave it to him. So he hasn't done what his objective said that he needed to do, which was to follow a particular methodology in bringing that in. So actually, when you look at that, he basically did a really, really good job. So he's performing. So in terms of that, and this is just to get a little bit of clarity around setting the standard. If, however, he would have brought in 159K, and so basically 50% more using the above methodology, which I know is made up, I would probably suggest that he, for that area, he get exceeding. And I think that's quite right. He's done what he needed to do, plus 50% more. And I think that would be, for me, then I'd go, yeah, I think you got exceeding, because that's what we want to quantify. If he, however, brought in the 189K through all of that, in terms of me, you know, he's nearly doubled his income, and I'd probably give him outstanding, because I think, you know, someone can double the income target that they've been set. There is the question around, was it stretching enough? Was it? And I think this is when you then look at it and you go in line with other people and go, right, actually, where are the standards? So if someone brings in 50% more, do we all give them, as managers across that, do we all give them exceeding? If someone doubles it, is it outstanding? And just setting those parameters, so making sure that there is a consistent approach across how we rate. When we go, I've got a quick question from Graham. So how do we know that by preparing the ground? Because on that one, it's just made up. I've just said he had no previous relationship with him and he didn't follow the method above. So if he did have a relationship with this donor, then he'd probably done the work above, and thereby, if he had achieved that, I would have given him outstanding. So I think it's just one of those. It's just making sure, again, we've got all of the evidence that we need to make sure that we have that. A lot of the time, you could probably have those conversations. What does performing look like at the beginning of the year? What does exceeding look like? What does outstanding? Again, you need to agree that within, if you've got loads of fundraisers, you need to agree that across the board and set a standard so everyone's clear. I would always go, do you know what? What's the standard at the end of the year in terms of things like that? But it's just about communicating with peers to make sure that it's a consistent approach of applying those ratings throughout all of the teams that do that. So now we're going to move across to the next case study. And again, this is Janet. So Janet works with people affected by Parkinson's, and she's had to reach 20 people affected by Parkinson's a week. We've just put it really bland there, so it's not really a smart objective. She's had to increase awareness across of the services and online training offer. So that's what she had to do. At the end of the year, she'd reduced the number of face-to-face meetings, so reduced travel, reduced costs for the organisation because she hasn't had to drive to and from. She's had an average of 10 per week, but she's increased her digital consultations to 35 people affected by Parkinson's. And she'd done that from 5 from the previous year, and she'd done a little bit of additional work. So she's also worked with a local centre to operate a new offer. And I know I haven't given you what that offer is, but again, these are very, very made up, just to give a sense. When we look at that, it's about, again, we're just going to go through exactly the same thing, different poll. What performance rating would we give us? I'm just, because that's a smaller one, I'm going to give you 30 seconds just to have another read through that. And then we'll put another poll up. And I will have a little dance. Jess has told me to stop dancing. I have stopped. You're in the same mind, Patricia, as Jez. It doesn't look good either. Right, we're going to put the poll up. And then again, we're going to see what everyone thinks. So what rating would you give Janet? Any more for any more? Right, I'm going to kick off. If it was me, I must admit, I think the Blues have it. I would be giving an exceeding rating for that. I think she's turned around. If you go back to, we'll go back to the presentation. If we look at that, she has doubled the amount of people affected by Parkinson's that she's reached, which is, which is great in terms of that. She's used digital tools, she's used creative ways through her pioneering behaviour, and also she's used her initiative and a drive or a pioneering aspect to actually go out and work with a local centre to have a new offer. And I know, again, we haven't gone through that, what that is. If that offer affected everyone with Parkinson's and we then took that offer or that offer was not just local to a local centre and we'd move that, then you would have other people going, do you know what, that is absolutely outstanding, and she would absolutely smash it, and there would be no question that she didn't get outstanding for that. But it just gives us a sense of, obviously, we all look at things differently. We had, on that last one, we had over 17 people pick a different area. It just shows that by doing these and testing these, we really need to make sure that we have clarity about what we need to deliver in our role, what our objectives need to be, and how we need to behave to get there. So in terms of that, that's exactly where we are. So it was just a couple, just to get, a little appetite of the sorts of things that you were going to be looking at as employees or line managers throughout that. So now you will be really, because we have most people back. So you're really pleased to know I haven't got long left until we go to the Q&A bit. At the mid-year review, I think the bit that we just wanted to cover off here is what data have you retained? So I know I said right at the beginning, keep those, the evidence that's really, really linked to you delivering your role, performing, exceeding, and all of that. At the mid-year review, you have an opportunity to review that. And I know a lot of people will review it as they go through because that's what we do. We have got an area, as you would have just seen from the video, we've got a document management area within there, so you can just drag and drop things in there throughout the whole year. If you're putting them in there, make reference to them. Don't write up everything that's in there. Again, I would say don't, if you've got, an email thanking you to do something or thanking you for that, that's not what you want to call as evidence. What you want is thank you because you achieved X, Y, and Z, and this is the impact that you had. They have to be impactful, no, when you're actually retaining data. So it's really, really good. I think the bit that I would always say around the appraisal, if you have performed your job, so if you had to do A and you've done A, don't then write in the commentary box, I was supposed to do A and I did it. There's no point, because we know you've done it by you putting that. What I would say is you need to provide evidence and information by you or your line manager where there's areas that they've had to continually talk to you about that you're not developing or you're underperforming in a particular area, or demonstrate and articulate where you've exceeded or been outstanding. If you've done exactly what it said on the tin, you could just put, I've delivered against what I needed to. There's no point in writing this for the sake of writing it. So thereby, it will really speed up the time that you need to have informal reviews and have informal meetings. One of the new bits, as you'd have just seen from the form, is at the mid-year review, self-assessment. This is a big thing, and I know this is going to be a big change for people across Parkinson's UK, but actually if we own our roles, we own our delivery, we should be able to sit down and look at what we had to do and what we've done and how we've done it, and be able to come up with a self-assessment around how have I performed, how do I think I've done against that based on the evidence that I've got. Also, your line manager will also do an assessment of you. If they're the same, no discussion really needed because you're there. If they are different, then excuse me, then obviously there needs to be a discussion. Just so you know, obviously the overall rating, it will be your manager's decision and it will be based on the evidence or the perception that they have of an area. I want to reiterate at this point, if you haven't got clear defined role descriptors or clear objectives, whether they're behavioural objectives or individual objectives, and they're not SMART, then that's when you create an area of uncertainty, and then the manager will go, well, this is what I expected you to do, and you go, well, this is what I thought I needed to do, and it's not clear. The manager will just go, sorry, based on what I thought and my assessment, this is what you're getting. So just really make sure that you've tied them down. One of the things that I would also remind you, Cascade, our HR and payroll system, is like, it's a secure system. It holds your personal banking, personal and sensitive data. It's no different than a banking website. It will log you out after 30 minutes. So it's actually 45 minutes, I think it logs you out. So if you are going in and writing War and Peace, make sure you tab through to the end every 30 minutes and just save it off, and then go in and update again and start again. If you spend an hour on it and you haven't gone to the end and saved and gone by reckon, it will not save any information that you have put in throughout the whole time that you've been on there. So please really be careful with that. We have it on the longest time open to allow people to put enough content in there, so not saving it every 5 minutes. But actually, because it is a secure site and under legal obligations as a site that holds your personal sensitive data, it will log you out. So I don't want anyone losing data, so please make sure that you do that. Once the meeting's over, as I said at the beginning, it's down to you to write this up. You know, even after the review, your manager will go, right, this is evidence that I've got. We'll have a discussion. This is what I think. This is why I think. You take notes, take some salient points and some summaries. It's down to us as all individuals to go away and write up any agreed notes. Only one person should be writing in that appraisal form, and that's you. Obviously, your line manager, your head of department, your director can all see your appraisal forms within the line of sight. So within that line management line, they can all go in and see it. They won't be updating it. It's only down to you and your line manager to update it. But just make sure that you are taking responsibility for writing that up. I always say, when you started your mid-year review, put a draft in there. It's good to set off with a discussion and have some things done. If you retain enough information and that you've got clear and clarity around your role, an appraisal should take, a mid-year review or an end-of-year review should take between 30 and 60 minutes to complete. If people are sitting in meetings for 2.5 hours, then you haven't recorded enough data, or you haven't got clarity on what you needed to deliver. So, and we'll learn by this, but I just want to say, you know, that's what you should be doing. Once you have done all of your mid-year review, come out, go back in, and on the first screen it just says, what date did you have your mid-year review? Populate that. What that will do is to send a trigger to your line manager to say you've completed your mid-year review. Also sends a trigger to HR, because obviously we need to make sure that everyone's completed their review in the time frame. It's no different around the interim process now, and what will be the new appraisal process. We will run reports, and it is mandatory that everyone goes through and has a formal review, and from those two dates, the mid-year and end-of-year review dates, that's how we report back to the senior leadership team on that. So just a reminder, and on the reminder, don't look at it once a year. It will be really hard. Keep it a live document. You all go in there, you're putting your flexi in there, you're using it for your holiday, you're checking your pay slips. When you go in and you have, even if it's a monthly chat and a catch up over a coffee or something, and if you've got salient points, go in there, keep it updated. Remember, if your role changes, or say you've got given a project that was for 6 months and for business reasons it's not happening, take it out and replace it with something that is going to happen, and make sure you keep it alive. If it's not a live document and you do it now and then you don't look at it to the end of the year, it is going to be pointless. Remember, it's a two-way process led by you, but it's an engagement role between you and your line manager. It can be an enabler, the appraisal process. It can create an environment where you have to have honest and frank discussions between you and your line manager. If you lead it, like I said earlier, it's always easier. If you identify areas that you're not as well as you could be, or that you need to improve on, you raise them. Don't be told that you're not doing something in the way that it needs to be done. You identify it, and then you identify a solution that's going to change the way that you need to do it. Ask for support. You know, there's no point saying, I didn't do that because I didn't have this skill, or I didn't understand, or I wasn't clear. When you feel it, step up, ask for support. That's what your line manager or your review is there for. It's to give you the support or signpost you in the way that you can get that. Just their evidence, you know, again, just if you want to put, I know there's some roles that have got peer or supervision reviews, or you have one-to-one notes from really formal things every 3 months, put them in there. It's good to have them as evidence, but it's not It's not like your emails, every email I've ever sent, let's put 400 documents in there. And I have known people to do that. So don't do that, because it'll be pointless if you put too much in there. And then just keep that conversation going. Talk to your line manager and reviewer. So if you are matrix managed and you work across different disciplines, talk to both people. It's no point just talking to one. You need to understand what the expectations are from everyone. In terms of, if you are matrix managed, only your line manager can see your review document within Cascade, so you'll need to make sure that you take screenshots, or you go and take an open computer where they can see it, and make sure that you're sharing the information what you need to. Then what else? Appraisals. Now, we're not talking interim, which I started with, which need to be completed by the 14th. All of your appraisals, and so what your role is, what your objectives are, if any, and your agreed behaviours objectives for this year need to be completed by the end of February. I'm going to run reports and updates to department heads so they can keep track. Everyone has to have one. There's not one person in this organisation that shouldn't have a completed appraisal by the end of February. Couple of areas just to note: if you are on probation, there's no separate process. Use this form. We don't want there to be a disjointed approach to recording and capturing how someone's done. If they're new to Parkinson's UK, put it in there. Yes, you might need to manipulate that and adapt it after your probation period, add other elements of the role, maybe close down an objective and move that weight into a different objective to fulfill the remainder of the year. But we don't want information in everywhere. If you are changing management, so if your manager's going off on maternity leave or they're leaving the organisation, they should be doing your appraisal before they go. And I don't care if that's 10 people, if it's 6 months, you need to have a clear record of your performance and what the expectations with you, so that can be passed to the next manager. And that's the same in changing roles. So if you're in a role and you change role, close down that appraisal. You can open up more than one for a year. You can have multiple ones. So if you've had a role for 6 months, get your current manager to close that down, get an overall agreed rating as if it was the end of the year, and then you start a new one. What you'll then do is compare apples with apples at the end of the year and say, right, I got this. This is where I was graded in the first part of the year. The next manager or whoever's managing you will take that into account, but it will then be just assessed against the new role. Because obviously, if you have been promoted, you might have been at the top of your game, been outstanding, you've been promoted, got a pay increase. The last remainder, you might be developing in that role, because obviously you're new and it's a bigger stretch. But it only goes on the last role that leads up and that finishes in December. So that's just me. What else? Then supporting information. So there's loads. We've got setting smart objectives, giving feedback, listening skills. We've got a guidance on the process. So obviously, what Jez and Louise just went through with you, and what I've been through the whole of today. There's a guidance on what needs to be included in a job role, what needs to be included in the objectives, and gives you some really clear pointers. It's only 5 or 6 pages, but talks you through basically what I've been talking to you about for the last hour and a half. Then you've got a guidance which basically gives you the option. You can either go back and look at the video, or you can look at the guidance which gives you step by step. And then out of these sessions, as you can see, people have given questions and questions that we felt that people would answer. So we will be developing an FAQ. Probably won't go out until next week, until everyone's had the opportunity to have a training session. So we're only running 3 of these. Then it will be for people to follow them up on video. So if you're one of them people that's watching this back, we are hoping that the guidance goes out in the first week of February. I will also be running a couple of 30-minute Q&A sessions, and they'll be arranged probably the latter part of next week and the week after. They are just going to be for anyone to come and join. I'm not going to do a presentation. It will be, what are the issues that have been raised, and we'll just go through some of them, and we'll add that to the Q&A session. If you have got personal questions that link personally to you, that you don't feel you can ask your line manager, either speak to a member of the HR team or just jot that down on HR queries, and we'll endeavour to come back to you on that. So then we've got questions, and I did that in an